Okay, let's start flexing our muscles. I will put down a muscle flex node. First input being the rest muscles. Second input is going to be our animation bones. So I'll just create another object merge and I'll point to the bones anim. The third input is the muscle tension lines, which is optional. So let's first look at the settings without it. So without the tension lines, we can use the muscle flex just to animate our muscles, even if we're not interested in getting any flex at all. And we can do that because the deform node here is going to do a point deform. However, there's just one little problem in this situation. If we display our bones, we're not seeing our bones. And that is because the bones are actually offset from the muscles, because even though the bones are in their T-pose at the first frame, they are not at the origin. So to fix that, we go to deform, we set the bone geometry to use from attribute T-pose, and now hit enter to enter the viewport state. Now the muscles line up with the bones. And basically this is why you would want the muscle flex if you don't actually want any flexing, because this will make sure that your muscles align with your bones on the starting frame, and it will deform your bones, your muscles to your bones if you need it, which you will only need if you have your on your muscle solver, if you have the muscle ends set to constraint to target animation. This is whether you have flexing or not. If you're using constraint to target animation, you will want your deform to maybe be a little bit more accurate than if you're using the default setting of constraint to nearest bone. So with the constraint to nearest bone setting, it doesn't matter if the muscles are a bit janky in the deformation. This is just a preview. As long as they are matching the muscles, as long as the muscles and bones are matching, then it doesn't matter if there's a bit of an ugly deformation. But if you are using the constraint to target animation option, then you just want to make sure that it doesn't look weird in your ends region. It doesn't matter if it's deforming weirdly around the belly, but if you have muscle ends, so say you had maybe painted a muscle end mask around the edges here and you're getting this weird deformation, that is less than ideal because it's going to pin to that. So in that case, you might want to either fiddle with your point deform settings here to get it to follow better, or you can of course animate your muscles another way. You don't have to use the muscle flex, but this is an easy way to do it. Okay, I'm going to turn off delta mush because it makes it slower and I don't care about the deformation being a bit ugly. I'm just following this. I just want this point deformed animation to display my flexing. Okay, so if we want flexing, but we don't want it to be driven by tension lines, we just want to manually key the flexing on and off, we can go to the muscle flex tab, click detect new, and you'll see each muscle gets its own parameter. And this will control how much it flexes, and it can be keyed. And if you look at in the viewport state, you'll see K sets the keyframe, 0 sets muscle tension to 0, 1 sets muscle tension to 1. So what you can do when you're in the state, you can select a muscle, let's say this one, and I'm going to hit 1, and you see it's set its value to 1, and I'm going to hit K to key it. When it's green like that, it means it's keyed on that frame. Then if I go a few frames earlier, I can hit 0 to set the value to 0. I think I used, yes, okay, it turns out the numpad 0 doesn't work. It has to be the keyboard 0. So I set that to 0. Oh, I went out of the viewport state. Control Z. Need to go into the viewport state, otherwise it's going to key everything. So I just wanted to key the selected muscle. And now maybe I want to do this one. That work? Yes. Key it. A few frames earlier, 0. Key it. Anyway, you could spend an age, an eternity doing this if you wanted to, but I definitely don't want to. So I'm going to reset all because I don't want those keys. And instead, I'm going to use my merged together muscle tension lines. This I will create later. So now what we're going to do, I'll just go to the first frame, go to muscle tension lines tab, and detect new. So now it will bring in all the lines. So if you ever create new lines, you'll want to do detect new again to add them. If you've deleted some, you can say remove unused. And you can say reset all, but then it will also reset the values. So just beware of the reset all. And similarly for the muscle flex, if for whatever reason you have new muscles that you've added or removed, you can use these buttons too. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to connect a muscle to a tension line in order to drive its tension or its flex. You can see the attribute that we're editing is called muscle tension, and muscle tension is what the muscle solver will use to make the muscles contract and bulge. So that is what we're driving basically when we say we're flexing the muscle. Okay, so let's say I want to select this calf muscle. And if you see the bottom here, it says press L to assign a muscle tension line to selected muscles. So I will press L, then I'll select the one that I want to use, and I want to use this long one. And now if we look at activation links, you will see that that one has been added. And at the same time, the mirrored muscle has the R leg added. However, if I do it, instead of doing it in the viewport, if I choose something here, it won't automatically update the matching mirrored muscle. So that is an upside of using the viewport over the parameter settings. It is worth noting that this is the reason why we had our muscle mirror as our previous step, because this way, when we set the activation links, it will automatically mirror it to the other side, whereas we don't have a way to mirror it once we've already set it on one side. If we then suddenly add the mirrored muscles later, we can't mirror it. So that is the argument for that. Also because it's actually setting the tension per frame, and we want these activation links to be symmetric, and the activation ratios, we generally will want to have symmetric values, but we don't want the muscles to be firing at the same time, because they're generally, for instance, when the one leg is moving one way, the other leg is moving in the other way, so you generally won't necessarily have your muscles firing at the same time on both sides. So another reason why the mirror happens before the muscle flex. Okay, so now I have linked one of my muscles. Let's link a few more. Again, the caveat still holds that I am not an expert in animal locomotion. I have more expertise in the tools themselves, so I might be wrong in what lines I connect to what muscles. So please take what I'm doing with a grain of salt in that regard. So let's say I'm going to link these muscles. So you can do multiple muscles. I'm holding Shift to do multiple muscles. And I want them to be, so I'm pressing L. I'm going to link them to this line here. Hit Enter, and that should have linked them. What else can we do? We could do the glute and these quads. No, the quads are at the top. Whatever these are called, I will link them L with this. I can go and I can link these obliques. Oops, I accidentally. Okay, I'll link them with this. Not entirely sure how anatomically correct that is, but let's see. And then another one is here. And I think I'll link this one, the same one as calf. Okay. Maybe create, no, let me go back and create one here. I'll do one like that. And I will call it L shoulder front. And I can also do L shoulder back and a shoulder side. And now I need to detect new. Spacebar F. Okay, let's say I want to link these two to this. And I want to link these deltoids to this. And I want to link these to that. That is a bit of a guess, but something like that. The animation I have doesn't have much motion in the upper body, so we'll have to focus more on what's happening in the legs. So where were we? Okay. So now that I've connected them, let's play the animation or just scrub through the timeline and see what that is doing. So you see we get the muscles going from this dark gray through orange all the way to red. Okay, so the gray means no flex, red means fully flexed, orange means somewhere in between. And how that is determined is as follows. You see that there is, under the muscle tension lines, there's this activation ratio, which goes all the way to 2. So basically, whenever the activation ratio is below 1, it means it will activate when the line gets shorter. So when the line shrinks, the muscle or muscles linked to it will activate. If the activation ratio is greater than 1, or equal to 1 actually too, then whenever the tension line gets longer, connected muscles will activate. Okay? And when it gets shorter, it will do nothing. So this is pretty significant in that it has basically an abrupt switch in behavior around 1. That's only one part of it. Okay, let's look at the case of a value being less than 1, the activation value being less than 1. And let's look at, I want to look at these muscles here. Right, so the idea is when the knee lifts up, this line is going to get shorter, so the muscles will activate. I'm going to talk about it as if it's the length of the muscle, but what it actually is it is the ratio of the current length divided by the rest length. And then that value gets cubed to get it with more impact. It's to have a non-linear ramp in, basically. So let's look at the hips. So when the activation ratio is less than 1, so this, let's say we're going to set to 0.4. Okay. When the length ratio of the tension line cubed, but I'm not going to keep saying that. And the length ratio is 40% or less than the rest length of that tension line, then the muscles will be fully flexed. If the tension line ratio is 1 or greater, so if it's equal to the rest length or longer, then it will be fully relaxed. And if it is in a value between 0.4 in this case and 1, then the tension will be linearly fit between 0.4 and 1, which means if I have this activation ratio set to 0.4 0.99, which is still less than 1, but it is only 0.01 away, so only 1% less than the full rest length. That means we only have 1% range within which to go from fully activated to fully relaxed. Whereas if my value is 0.01, that means I have 99% range for the muscle to go from fully relaxed to fully activated. The further this value is from 1, the more leeway you will have in having a ramp in and ramp out, which is a bit tricky because you don't always have a lot of control in how much the line gets shorter, right? It's going to depend a lot more on the range of motion of the joints than on what you want the range you want it to be for going in and out. That's part of the reason why I recommended drawing the tension lines the way I did, so that they can increase and decrease in length more significantly than if they match the muscle positions more closely. But there is also a workaround. But anyway, let's first actually look at what this looks like. So I'm just focusing on these muscles here. It's taking a bit long to turn on, I would say now with this value. Probably helps if I can see. Yeah, let's switch from there. Okay, so you see what I have to do here to get it to flex when I want it is to get it really close to 1, which I do not want. So here is my little hack for this. I'm going to create an attribute adjust float. Didn't mean to put it in there. I meant to put it here. So we want it on the tension lines. We are going to specify the tension line, but we need to set this to primitive, and we need to set this to autoflex ID, and then we need to click this again. And now I will say I want it on this left hip front, and actually at the same time I want it on the right hip front. Oh, I need it to be on 9 so that it actually sets it correctly. Okay, attribute name needs to be rest length, and now I want to do a multiply operation. And when in a situation like this where you want it to activate when the line shrinks, so where your activation ratio is less than 1, then you want to increase your rest length. So you want to multiply it by a value greater than 1. So let's try something like that and see what that does to how low I can take this value. See, I can now take this a lot lower. In fact, probably too low. So let's bring this down more to something like that. Sometimes it doesn't quite recook properly. Let's look at it from the side. I think I maybe can make it a bit longer. Okay. That looks great. Now, look at this. We have our muscles activated on the T-pose. And that is because we have scaled up our rest length. But on the T-pose, so on the T-pose, this sees it as no longer being at its rest length. It's actually, well, the rest length is actually 15% greater than this. So this is a great way to get muscles that are already in a flexed state in the T-pose to let them have a flex state. So there's another way of doing that, and that is to go into your muscle flex and just set a value for your muscle, and if you don't key it and just leave it at that value, it means the flex can make it go higher, get a higher flex value than this, but it will never go lower than this. So you'll never get it to fully relax. But the other way, you can still get full relaxation this way. It just isn't going to be on the T-pose. Okay. So now if I move it, you see it's fully relaxed, and then it comes on, stays on, and relaxes, and comes on and stays on, and that's the end of the animation. Okay, so that is when your muscle is activating when the tension line gets shorter. So what about if you want the muscle to activate when the tension line gets longer? So let's look at this calf. I want it to be on, and now it's on when I want it to be off, and now it's off when I want it to be on, which is a great sign that I actually want to invert this line's behavior. So I'm going to look at this L leg, and I want to set it to a value above 1. So now it will activate and be relaxed when it's in the air and active when it's on the ground. But it's not exactly lining up the way I want, because partly I want it to start off already active in this state, in the T-pose state. So I'm going to have to create another attribute adjust for float. I can actually see one in my history here. And, or maybe it would even be easier to just duplicate the existing one, because then I can just reuse a lot of the settings there. So I just need to re-specify the lines. So I want this one and that one. Nope. Press 9 again. This one and this one. Nope. I'm not having a good day today. Okay, group select on. Oh, I haven't got autoflex on. Okay, now it should work. Yep. Now you can see all the benefits that are built into the default muscle nodes when you try to do the same type of thing with more generic Houdini nodes. Okay, so when the autoflex value is above 1, i.e. we want it to activate when the line gets longer, then what we want to do in order to give it a bit more range is we want to shrink the rest length. Okay, so let's try it like that and see what we get. Spacebar F. Now we see on the T-pose we have the muscles active already, which is very promising. But I think it goes off for too short. So maybe I can partly... So I kind of want it off there already. Let's tweak this. See how that goes. I think maybe the range is a bit too big now. And now this value is too big here. So it is a balancing act, but it's very satisfying to get correct. I'm quite happy with this. Okay. So that is how you will tweak your activation ratios to get the muscles to fire. One thing I haven't mentioned here is I only set the left-hand side once. So you also need to set it for the right-hand side. If you want it to be the same, you can, which you generally would, because it's not, this isn't saying when during time it's firing, it's just saying what the length ratio needs to be for it to be active. So I'm going to say right-click, copy parameter, right-click, paste relative reference, and the same for this other one. And basically any other ones. It's probably easiest just to set it for all of them. And that is how you will be getting your muscle activation. And now it should look better on the other side too. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then I just want to add one more point. You'll notice that, for instance, I have the same line for both of these two muscles. And because the one line only has one activation ratio, these two muscles, because they have the same driving line, they're going to be firing at exactly the same time. Now, if you don't want that, if you want a slightly different activation ratio for essentially the same line, what you will have to do is create another line in more or less the same place, give it a different name, and link that line instead. And then you can give that a different activation ratio if you want that level of control. Okay, in the next video, we can finally start simulating our muscles.